To boost circularity, the materials we use should be reusable. That's it. They should have more than one cycle. When they cannot be reused anymore, they should be biodegradable and, if not possible, recycled. Landfill should be the last option.
Direct reuse of some facade components, such as windows, might not be possible, as current needs and legislations might require, for instance, better thermal performance.
In these cases, the first challenge that we face is how to close the loop of the different elements of the facade component or system.
So, to understand how we can do this, we need to substitute demolition or landfill with selective separation or disassembly of facades. And this is not always an easy task. Look what happened with these windows. The frame, both fixed and movable, cannot be reused due to the small dimension of the profile. The inhomogeneity of the materials, timber with cork and so on, and the shape, in general there are slots for the gaskets, holes and so on, is a problem. The requirement of maximize the transparent part led to minimize the frame dimension and the profile, and the need to include silicone or structural glue between glass and the frame. On one hand, this reduces the material use for the frame, while it is more difficult to dismantle it and try to reuse or repair it.
The IGU, the insulated glazing unit, has a limited direct reuse potential. On one hand, it is very rare to have two buildings with the same window dimensions, and adapting the IGU dimension is very difficult. On the other hand, the dismantled IGU has probably lower performance than what is required at the new installation, both for new energy efficiency requirements and for aging reasons, such as possible internal gas losses or coating degradation. To solve this, solutions to improve the performance of existing IGUs without the need to replace them are starting to be implemented in case studies. Moreover, if the IGU could be dismounted in its different pieces without damaging them, the reuse of their components could be enhanced. In fact, the glass is one of the key components of the windows, because it's the one with the highest embodied energy and the one that is less damaged during operation phase. This could lead to a high reuse potential of this component for several purposes, but it is still very difficult to reuse it with the same purpose. The main reasons are the difficulty to adapt its dimensions and the presence of specific coatings that could change from project to project. Instead, the glass paints could be reused for other transparent and design applications where the thermal performance needs are not so relevant.
Besides this, we damage several elements during the disinstallation process. For instance, the most difficult part that we dismantled was the insulation part that was glued to the window monoblock frame, so the dismantling phase was quite difficult. So probably this kind of element will be just delivered to the landfill. And other elements like the hinges, the handles and all the metal part were quite easy to be dismantled since the connection part was mechanical.
Of course, the output of the selective separation would have been really different if we think of the end of life of facades already in the design process.
Yes, that is true, but the challenges go beyond including the circular mindset in the design of facades. It is also about the current lack of a market demand, cost effectiveness, and trust to go for the reuse elements instead of virgin ones. Because of that, facade manufacturing companies still see little business opportunities in the circular approach in their facade components.
You are right, Leire. I would also include as a main challenge the current legislation that is in many cases categorize the construction dismantled materials as a waste materials and limit its second life use. Besides, in a circular scenario, the value chains need to be adapted with new stakeholders, such as selective separation companies, urban mining, platform and warehouse, etc. And they are still not so widespread so far. And finally, we also see that the mindset in the construction value chain, starting from the client and the designers, need to become more circular. And this is already being done in other sectors, like textile, technologies and so on.